Hey Pilgrims, it's Nadine from Nadine Walks, and I'm happy to be here with another video. So today's topic I think is a really important one, and that is solo female pilgrim safety while walking the Camino. So this is a pretty big topic, and I'm going to try to cover as much as I can. A lot of it is based on either my own experience or also what I've heard from other pilgrims or read on sites like Facebook or the Camino forums or the different groups. I want to start by saying that, while this video is certainly focused more toward the solo female pilgrim, I do hope it'll be helpful for everyone. So whether you are a female pilgrim that is traveling with another person or a group of people, if you are one of the men who follow this channel or have found this video, I still think and hope that you'll be able to get something out of the video, because I think really the goal is to keep everyone as safe as possible on the Camino when having an experience like this. And I think the more that we can know what to do in situations or how to help in situations will really contribute to the overall safety. I've had a lot of people ask me if the Camino is a safe experience for a female to have, especially going solo. And certainly in my own life, I've had a lot of, my friends and family members and colleagues kind of ask me about it when I mention my walking plans. And I think it is really one reason that I finally wanted to create this video. It's one that I've been thinking about for a long time. And I think I'm gonna start by saying right off the bat that I think the Camino is a very safe experience for women to have going solo. Now, bad things happen and can happen even on the Camino, just like they would at home, just like it could happen traveling in any other place. So yes, bad things can happen. Overall, I think the Camino is really safe. I think there are a lot of things that lend itself to that. The fact that especially on the more well-traveled routes, you are really walking with a community of people. And so that even if you decide to go solo and stay solo and walk a lot all by yourself during the day, for the most part, there are going to be other pilgrims around you. And it is a really warm, supportive, kind community. And people are really looking out for each other. And I think that really helps make the experience safe for someone. So even if you're a pilgrim who's setting out alone, in a lot of cases, you'll find that you won't be alone for very long, especially if you want to kind of link up and connect with other people. You may find that pretty quickly, whether, the first day or within a day or two, you might find that you're not actually alone after all. And that is really great. Personally, I really do like to walk alone, and I tend to stick alone when I'm on the Camino, so that even though I make great connections, and in the evenings, I often find that I'm eating with others or hanging out with them, during the day, I spend a lot of time walking alone. So certainly you can get your solo time too, but even that being said, for myself, spending a lot of time alone and walking some of the less traveled routes, I still think that the Camino is a really safe travel experience and overall safe experience. So I've walked a number of different Caminos. I can't remember exactly what the count is, but 9, 10, 11 different Camino routes. And the majority of that I've walked all alone. I've had a couple of friends join me for just short parts of the routes, but for the most part, 95% of the walking I've done solo. And as I mentioned, I've walked some of the less traveled routes as well. For the purpose of this video, even though I think the less traveled routes are pretty safe, I do think that there may be some different considerations for those. For the sake of this video, I'm really going to be talking more about the popular Camino routes, the more well-traveled ones, and specifically talking about Spain and Portugal. So we're really looking at the Camino Francés, the Camino Portugués, the Norte, the Primitivo, Camino Inglés, so the more well-traveled routes. But personally, I do go on the Camino solo, and I do feel really safe. That being said, I have gotten so many questions about the fact that I'm traveling alone. I've gotten comments about it. I think as women, we have been conditioned to believe or feel that traveling solo isn't safe. I think men believe that too. Not everyone, certainly, but I think there's just a kind of general thought out there that it's, not safe for women to do these types of activities all alone. And especially something like the Camino, for those who don't know really what the Camino is about or how it works. So when you have an activity that involves some kind of physical challenge, walking long distances across a country, when it's not as predictable, it's not as planned out, I can also see why a lot of people would think that's a more unsafe experience than maybe a traditional trip where you have your hotel booked and all your transportation, you've got your activities. I can understand why people, maybe especially not knowing what the Camino is about, why they would be concerned. But I also do think it's the fact when a female says they're going to travel alone, it's often met with a lot of caution or concern or surprise. I've had people call me crazy, and these are very, kind, well-intentioned, intelligent people, colleagues of mine, but that's the reaction. You're crazy to go alone. I've had people call me brave to do this. And sometimes I think it's hard for me to always know how to respond, because I also recognize that in traveling alone, I may be more at risk, certainly than if I were a man, and then also certainly if I was traveling with other people. So I do understand that. And I have to also be kind of informed and stay vigilant and aware. And I am cautious in certain situations. So I can understand the concern about a female going on the Camino solo. Again, though, and I'll probably repeat this multiple times, all of that being said, I still think the Camino is a really, really safe travel experience. I think it is because of the community and the help that is right there and all the people who are here. I do think for a solo female traveler, it can be one of the safer experiences to have. I also think about my day-to-day life here in my own country. For the most part, I feel really safe. But going into a major US city, I'm always a bit on edge, usually more so than I am on the Camino. I also work in a school. So when I'm during the school year, every day I'm walking into a school building, and that presents its own safety issues. Again, I would argue, I don't know that that's any more safe than walking the Camino. It probably isn't statistically. So that's another topic though. But that is also to say that I think truly the act of the Camino is a pretty safe one. Okay, so all of that being said, I do want to talk about some safety considerations, what can happen, and some tips on what to do to help keep yourself safe or to know what to do in case you're in a bad situation. So while I think the Camino is really safe, there are bad things that can happen there and that have happened there. If we're talking about Spain and Portugal, I do want to say that violent crime is very, very rare there, and it's very rare on the Camino. I think when I'm talking about bad things that can happen on the Camino, it's more kind of focused on incidents of harassment, sexual harassment. There have been some reports of an exhibitionist, someone flashing himself at female pilgrims as they walk by. I think, occasionally someone being pursued or followed. So those are really kind of more the types of incidences that I'm thinking of when talking about, a pretty negative experience happening to a female pilgrim on the Camino. Again, these situations are very rare, but they do happen. I have heard about it from a pilgrim when I was on a Camino. I have read reports of this on the Camino forum. I think, again, though, when we hear about these situations, there tends to be a lot of focus on them, and it can be really easy then to think that, oh, this is happening a lot. So again, I would remember that even when I am talking about some situations, it is very rare. I did want to share the experience of one particular pilgrim. She actually reached out to me over Instagram a few months ago, I think right after her Camino Portuguese in the spring. She had an incident happen to her, and she had been following me on YouTube and just thought that her story could be helpful for other pilgrims if I was ever going to make a video about safety on the Camino. And so I am so thankful and appreciative that she shared her story, and that I can also share it here just so that others can be aware of what can happen, and then maybe what to do or what could be helpful to do. So this pilgrim was on the Camino Portuguese, and she was on a section of the trail walking alone. And unexpectedly, a man appeared behind her. I think she said about 20 meters away. And he had like a fistful of money and was waving it around and calling out to her. She thinks he was trying to get her to like come over and like beckon her over. So she kind of like checked her pockets and her stuff to see if she had dropped the money. She thought, oh, maybe I dropped money and he's trying to give it back to me. But she kind of quickly realized that like, no, she didn't lose any money. She had all of her stuff with her. And she kind of turned to look at the man again, and he was making what she called perverted motions. And as soon as she saw that, she turned around and started walking as fast as she could down the path of the Camino. I believe she said that she very quickly texted a friend what was happening, and she captured her location on Google Maps and sent it to her friend just so that someone knew exactly where she was and what was happening. She said that I think the closest like restaurant or bar was about 20 minutes away, and she just walked as fast as she could to try to get there. And she said at that time, that was really the scariest part when she was moving away, that she just didn't know if she was being followed, if this man was intending to hurt her, if he was acting alone, or if there are other people. So it was really the unknown, especially, that I think was so scary, just not knowing what was going to happen. But she did get to the bar, the restaurant, and she told the owner there about what happened, and she decided to ask the owner if they could call the local authorities. And so they called the civil guard, the Guardia Civil, and the civil guard showed up in about, I think she said within 10 minutes, and they took her statement down. And there's a little bit of waiting because they were pulling up photos of who they thought could be the perpetrator, and she was able to verify that it was the same man in their photos, the same man that had appeared behind her. From there, I believe they asked if she wanted to kind of issue a formal statement. She could have said no, but she decided to say yes. And so they came to her albergue the next morning to have her sign some paperwork. I think they said that the last time something had been reported, and I'm not sure if that means in general or just probably more in that area and region, but it had been a year before. So, I mean, that either speaks to this doesn't happen often, and or, if more incidences do happen, it's just not reported. But they really thanked her for making the report and said that, because of Spanish law, they can't persecute without catching someone in the act, but that her account, along with any others, can help determine charges if that person is caught. And I also think that the more information that the police, the civil guard have about a person, about where they are, it can really help them patrol an area and keep pilgrims safe in the future, or in those immediate days around an incident. So this pilgrim also ended by saying that her experience just kind of made her aware of like how much women, especially solo female pilgrims, need to stay vigilant and just aware of their surroundings and what's going on. But that she felt that despite her experience, she still believed the Camino to be a very safe place, and that her experience was rare. And so I am just so appreciative that she shared that, and that I can share it here with you. I know even for me, it's so helpful to just kind of know a little more about exactly what I can do, and making a report, and what would happen if I decide, if I'm in a situation where I feel uncomfortable and I contact the authorities, like what that might look like. It was just really helpful for me to hear some of those steps. So in terms of making a report or contacting someone for help, I want to go over two different things that I think not only solo female pilgrims should do, but I think everyone should do, anyone who's going on the Camino. And the first is to memorize the number 112. This is the emergency number. For pilgrims or people from the States, it would be like dialing 911. And so it'll connect you to an operator who, they can connect you to someone who can speak English, and you can explain where you are, and you can have help come to you, or you can take the steps to report an incident that happened. The other thing, so again, that number, it's 112, and either make sure you burn that into your memory, or if you're afraid you're going to forget, you can put it in speed dial in your phone so that you have it right there. And then the other thing to do is to download an app onto your phone. It's called Alert Cops, and it's, pretty similar. It'll help connect you to someone who can assist in an emergency. Again, they can connect you with someone who can speak English or probably your language. I'm not sure how many languages they can speak, but hopefully they can find someone to communicate with you. And they can also, within that app, kind of access your location in case they need to come out to you. It's an app that I have on my phone. I haven't had to use it, but I think if you put it on your phone and just kind of get familiar with what it looks like and how it can work, I think it is a very easy and effective way that you can get in touch with someone that you need to, or be connected with the authorities to be able to help in different situations. So I also wanted to go over just a few other tips and things to keep in mind and things that you can do. And to kind of echo what this pilgrim who shared her story with us, to echo what she said is that I think just the need to kind of remain aware and vigilant is so important. And I would also say really to trust your gut. It's something that I try to always remember just in general in my life, but especially when walking a Camino, is that I'm trying to listen to my intuition on stuff. And if I get a weird feeling or something in my gut feels off, I tell myself that I have to listen to that. Even if it doesn't make logical sense, I listen to my gut. I had an experience, and actually I should say that despite, all the Caminos that I've walked alone, and it's been a lot, and I've had a lot of walking days, weeks, cumulative months of walking alone, I really haven't had anything really bad happen to me. And I'm so grateful for that. I have had a couple situations where I felt uncomfortable or uneasy. One of them, and this kind of goes along with trusting your gut, is I was on I think it was the Camino Primitivo, and I was kind of just gotten into a little village, and there was a car that was driving up kind of slowly behind me. And as it passed me, there were just a group of men in the car and the windows were down, and they kind of called out and yelled out something at me. I'm not sure what they said, but it didn't seem like totally friendly and kind. It just didn't make me feel great, made me feel uneasy. And the car continued to drive past me, but really slowly. And then when it got kind of to the end of the road, it stopped and kind of sat there for a little bit longer than I felt comfortable with, and then slowly made a turn. And I was still continuing to walk. And like in that time, as I kind of saw the car ahead and then I saw it turn, I passed a bar. And there were some outdoor tables, and I saw some pilgrims that I recognized, and I waved to them and said hi, but I kept walking because I wasn't intending to stop in that village. I had just kind of had a break, not too long before. And so I just continued to walk on. But after a minute, I just still felt this like uneasy feeling in my gut. I just kept thinking about that car. I didn't love that there weren't other pilgrims ahead or behind me, and that I didn't really feel great about heading out of that village all alone with this car maybe still around. And so I turned around, I doubled back, and I went back to the bar, and I just took off my pack and I got a drink, and I sat there for a while. And for one, just to kind of put some distance between me and that car, wherever it was. And then I think when I left, after I was done with my drink, I just kind of waited till some other pilgrims were leaving and kind of hung out, either I can't remember if I walked with them or just had them ahead of me, but I felt a lot better having other pilgrims around. And I didn't see the car again, and maybe it would have been totally fine. Probably it would have been fine, but my gut just didn't feel great. And in that case, I thought it was really important to listen to it. So that, I think, this is probably not advice that is new for any woman. I think we are so used to always having to be aware of our surroundings and just stay vigilant. And if something makes us uneasy, to pay attention to that and to try to act accordingly and be as safe as we can. But I would just say on the Camino as well, I think it's important to just listen to your gut if anything comes up. I do not think that anyone or a female pilgrim needs to be on edge constantly on the Camino and always looking over their shoulder. I don't think that's necessary. And I certainly know that's not the case for me as I walk. I don't feel that way. The vast majority of the time, I feel great. But every once in a while, there are situations that might make you feel a little uneasy. I do think one that comes up quite a bit is when you've arrived in a bigger town or city and you're leaving the next day, especially if you're leaving early in the morning. I know that there are a lot of female pilgrims who just don't feel entirely safe or maybe a bit cautious or uncertain about exiting the city, especially if it's still dark out or even if it's just really early. There just may be some situations or some people around that could make you feel really uneasy or unsafe. And I think the best advice here is to ask other pilgrims if you can walk with them. I think, again, the majority of the time, pilgrims they're not going to be surprised by you asking. They're going to be so happy to have you walk with them or, walk kind of in front or behind, but to be walking near them. I think if you're in an albergue, that's not too hard to do. I think if you stayed in private lodging, I think just kind of like head out of your hotel, but just kind of wait around until you see other pilgrims come by and stick with them or walk near them. I would say, and some of this may be more common sense, but I think it's, kind of worth repeating and talking about here. I would say don't get in a car with someone you don't know. Unless certainly it's a taxi, it's definitely an official taxi, that's okay. But I think as a solo female, I would just caution against getting into a car. If someone offers for you to come into their house, they say, oh, I have a coffee I could give you. I know there are some pilgrims who do that and are fine, and it's, the generosity of the local people. But again, if you're a solo female pilgrim, I would just be very cautious about doing that. Again, probably the vast majority of the time that person is kind and well-intentioned, but you just have to be really careful, especially if you're alone. One thing that some pilgrims do is that you could carry a whistle with you. That can just be like a just kind of easy additional safety measure to have. I think a whistle is something that's really lightweight and easy to carry. A lot of backpacks now actually have a whistle built into the strap. And so that's something I would just check out your backpack and kind of look around like a chest strap area and just see if on one of the clasps there's like just look for it. There might be a little whistle. So a lot of backpacks have those, and that's really great because you don't have to like dig around for it. The whistle is kind of right there if you need it. I think one other thing to just be aware of is if you're sharing your Camino on social media, especially if your profile is public and you have maybe a larger following and people are finding your channel or your site, you might want to consider whether it's, wise to post in real time or if you kind of want to delay posting about where you are, the cities you're in, places you're passing through, maybe so that no one can determine your exact location. I know that it's something that people consider when they're sharing their walk. And then I also wanted to share a resource, and I'll link to that in the video description below. But there is a Facebook group called Camigas. It's Camigas, a buddy system for women on the Camino. And so I think if you're a solo female, you want to walk the Camino, you don't have anyone from home to go with, you really want to do this experience, but you're really nervous about walking alone, I would definitely recommend going to this site. I'm not a member of it, but I have heard so many good things about it. I think there is a lot of support and encouragement for solo female pilgrims. I also think that they try to connect you and link you up with another pilgrim who might be walking the same route around the same time so that it can really connect a couple of pilgrims, female pilgrims, to be able to walk together. I think also if you are planning to do the Camino and feeling a little nervous, certainly when you get on the Camino, especially the well-traveled routes, it is very likely that you will meet people, within a day, within the first few days, and be able to connect with them and walk with them. But I do think there's some pilgrims who just don't feel comfortable with walking alone. And I also want to say that's okay. So I know, I'm trying to be focused on safety in this Camino, but also stress that overall the Camino is a really safe space and I feel very comfortable walking alone, but I know that not everyone does, and that's okay. So I do think, using maybe a site like this Facebook page or the Camino forum or different groups on social media, connecting with people there and seeing if anyone else is walking or would want to walk with you is absolutely something you can do. I also know that there are tour groups that will kind of organize your Camino, and you go with a group. And I think this is a really nice way if you are kind of heading out alone, you don't have anyone you know to go with, but knowing and being assured that you won't be completely alone. I would just check in with the tour operator and kind of ask how the actual walking works. I know that some people will just feel okay knowing that they have a contact in a group there, but they might be fine walking for stretches alone during the day. But there are other pilgrims who really don't want to be totally on their own, and they may always want someone with them or around them. I would just verify if you decide to go with the tour, just kind of see what that's like. Because I think if you do expect to have someone with you, you just want to make sure that's kind of part of the setup of the tour. So that's about all I have for this video. I am going to include some links and resources. I've referenced the Camino forum a few times, but this is a really great place where, not only can you find so many different resources and information and tips, but there's a lot of support, a lot of experienced pilgrims there. Whenever I look on the forum, I always see so many posts that are so encouraging, especially for female pilgrims, to be able to go on the Camino alone and have a wonderful time, and just really kind of reinforcing the fact that the Camino is a safe experience. And I know I went over some situations that can be scary and can make you feel unsafe or uncomfortable. But again, these situations are so rare, but if they do happen, I think and I hope that some of these tips will just make you feel a little more reassured in that you may know what to do if this happens to you, or you may know how to help someone else if it happens to them. But again, that's pretty rare, and overall the Camino is such a wonderful and safe experience. So please, if you have walked the Camino before and have any experience with this, or thoughts or information or tips, please include those in the comments. I think really, the more resources and advice and tips we can include here to help keep everyone safe is so, so important. So thank you all for that. Thank you for being here as ever. I appreciate this community so much. The Camino community really is so wonderful. So I will be back soon with more. So in the meantime, buen Camino.